This is a Hooverville built in Seattle in 1931. Many of these makeshift towns popped up across the US in the 1930s, populated by those who had lost their homes during the Great Depression. These towns are named after Herbert Hoover, who was president at the start of the Great Depression. His presidency was preceded by what appeared to be a booming economy that went bust the same year he took office. Americans blamed Hoover for the economic hardships they faced, and they voted him out in 1932 after his first term in office. This wasn't the only time the public retaliated against a president for widespread economic instability. For voters, the economy is an important metric to judge a president's success, and when things are bad, second terms aren't guaranteed. George H.W. Bush lost his chance for a second term in 1992, after Bill Clinton was famously advised by lead strategist James Carville to focus on the economy, stupid. During a 1980 recession, one-term President Jimmy Carter lost to Ronald Reagan, who delivered this now iconic address to voters, which helped secure the election.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago?
With the 2024 election just a year away, President Biden is facing a similar issue. His economic policies, branded as Bidenomics, have been credited with record low unemployment, but at the same time, high inflation has made cost of living relatively expensive. With many voters currently sharing a bleak view of the economy, Biden's poll numbers are trailing behind Trump's in key swing states.
Voters are going to blame the president, or they're going to give the president credit. That's how American politics works.
Whether Biden receives praise for a good economy or is blamed for a bad one, the truth is, a sitting president's influence over the economy isn't so straightforward. Although it's sometimes misunderstood and exaggerated by the American public, the idea that the president is responsible for the state of the entirety of the economy is not new. It's what made voters blame Herbert Hoover for the woes of the Great Depression, and what led his successor, FDR, to become the only president to be elected to office 4 times. The public saw Roosevelt's New Deal financial reforms as key in saving the economy. And in recent history, Obama, who took office after the start of the 2008 recession, was blamed by 1/3 of Americans for a bad economy just 6 months into his presidency.
These are just cycles that go up and down.
John Kane is a political scientist and an expert on how partisanship has affected the public's views on the economy.
Some presidents are lucky enough to come in on an upswing, right? And some presidents are not so lucky. And they come in, and by the time, if they've been in office for 2 terms, there's a really good chance at some point they're going to hit a little bit of a downswing. Being able to criticize a president for their performance on the economy is great in terms of politics.
This is likely a reason why Biden has been betting big on the success of Bidenomics. Described as the counter to trickle-down Reaganomics, Biden has embraced the name originally used by critics to negatively portray his economic agenda and attempted to repurpose it as a way to promote his focus on growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. Public sentiment has continued to sour on Biden's handling of the economy since he took office. However, the president has seen both praise and criticism concerning the economy over the last few years. As gas prices rose dramatically in 2022, Americans slapped stickers on pumps across the country, pointing out who they believed was at fault.
Joe Biden can't hide from the fact that he is the president of high gas prices.
As unemployment numbers have continued to improve throughout 2023, the president has not been hesitant to take credit for the success.
But unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low.
But is it fair to blame Biden or for him to take credit for any of these things?
I like to think about it as a kind of continuum. So at one end, if we imagine that the president has absolute control over the economy, where it's really just a matter of, the president decides where to put the dial. And at the other end, the president has absolutely zero control. We are far, far, far closer to that.
The president does have the ability to influence the economy through specific legislation. However, presidential action can only go so far to impact the economy. Congress controls government spending, not the president, which means many policies a president would want to implement need to be agreed upon and funded by a separate branch of government. Even when the two can agree, government spending only accounts for around 20% of GDP, meaning that 80% of this important economic metric is determined outside of government.
Imagine how much control you would have over your daily life if you weighed 100 pounds and wore 400 pounds of clothing. That gives you just a sense of, if you were trying to do anything it would just be massively difficult.
External forces the president has no control over, including inflation, supply and demand, wars, job openings, interest rates, and boom and bust cycles, all determine what the economy of the country will be like at any given time. When presidential economic policy can actually be implemented, it can take a long time to produce results, and sometimes results aren't seen until after the president has left office. Like when in 2018, Trump took credit for Black unemployment reaching a record low. But economic figures including job growth, average wages, unemployment, and even specifically Black unemployment had been improving since 2010, 7 years before Trump took office, and 8 years before he was able to claim responsibility for the record number.
Often, some of the most powerful explanations or ideas are very simple ones, even if they're not true. Unemployment is going up in my area, and it's like, well, whose fault is that, right? I don't like it. I'm angry about it. Who can I blame for this? There's a really complicated answer, or there's a simple one. And the simple one is, it's whoever is highest up that chain. Well, it must be the president's fault. And so that simple explanation is really powerful, even if it's not true.
What does all of this mean for Biden's chances at re-election in 2024 based on the potential success or failure of Bidenomics? Obviously, sitting presidents want credit for good economies, and to gain support, presidential hopefuls promise to fix bad ones. But with the country that has become more and more politically polarized over the last few decades, partisanship has begun to bias people's view of the economy. A 2019 study revealed that presidential approval has become less dependent on economic realities and relies more on partisan-motivated reasoning.
In the past, with kind of weaker partisan ties, we did kind of live in a situation where the economy is now a fair metric we can use. Again, I would say that was never really true, and I think most economists would agree that's not true. But over time, because of polarization, as you mentioned, the main consideration is the president a Democrat or a Republican? The performance of the economy, it still matters. It's not that it doesn't matter, but compared to in the past, it doesn't matter nearly as much.
Strangely, despite this evidence showing that polarization influences people's views, President Biden hasn't seen his approval increase alongside an improving economy. Even former President Clinton's long-term advisor, James Carville, who still believes it's the economy, stupid, is a little perplexed, admitting on CNN, "I'm starting to doubt myself a little bit because this economy is quite good." And telling The Hill, for whatever reason, people are not connecting this. They don't think that economy's that good. But whether Americans' views on Biden and the economy are fair, this is the situation he has found himself in with Bidenomics. And if inflation continues to remain high, although it may not be a direct result of his actions, he will likely be blamed for high cost of living.
I don't see an easy way out. It's like a knot that keeps getting pulled tighter. They know that this is something that matters to everyone. And so they will, paradoxically care about it less in terms of how they vote, but will care about it more in terms of using it as a line of attack. And as soon as one party does that, the other party has to respond. Around and around it will go. I don't really see an easy way out of it.